I had never sweat that much in my entire life, even in a sauna. I was burping for like 2 hours straight during this prayer, and stuff was coming out of my mouth. Literally felt like things were leaving my body. I actually experienced what it was like to be born again.
Who are you?
I identify as a soul first, which can't be defined. I wrote a book called Perspective. The first chapter is about who am I? Who are we? Who are you? The heart guy, the name, it really comes from my heartbeat saved my life. The biggest way to change your life is to change your perspective of yourself, which is your identity. What's the number one thing in your life? What do you focus on more than anything? That's your idol. So if your idol is God, it's constant. But if it's any circumstantial thing in the world, it rocks you because it ain't gonna be great forever. Not everything that you want or crave is your own. Demonic influence can create desires for you. The battle's not just you versus you. So if you want actual change, it only happens through spiritual perspective shifts. It's not an act of willpower.
Reality can shape you, or you can shape reality. Only one is freeing, yet both are empowering.
When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Do you feel like Christianity for you is closer to the home that you're in, or closer to the world that you're in? Who are you?
It's a really great question. I'm a lover of Jesus. I'm an artist. I'm a mentor. I'm a coach. I'm a DJ. I'm a fire spinner. I'm a gamer. I love tacos and food. I'm a lover. I'm a romantic. I don't know. Who am I not? I think would be a better question. I was thinking about this actually, ironically, a little bit today, where somebody said, like, dude, you're like an enigma. You're like everything. I'm like, it's a good word. Yeah. I have a lot of different interests. And by the grace of my mother, and I think how I was raised, I was never taught to be put in a box. In fact, only recently with like niching down, and I should niche down, have I ever like stressed myself to be one thing, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah. Honestly, it's been something I've been dealing with and struggling with a lot in this year in particular. Like a word that's come up for me a lot has been the word liminal, like living in between, right? In those in between spaces, and how like I was talking with somebody, actually my last guest, and she's a neuroscientist, and she was just talking about, well, there's not really anywhere to like actually like arrive to, right? And I think there's some part of me that always like envies those people who like have like that one thing that they do, whether it's like being a baseball player or being like they found like their thing, and like I've always like wanted that thing, but every time I like have that thing, it's like I personally end up getting like attached to it, and then I get like resentful of the things that I'm not having anymore, and then like versus like when I've been learning more and more to just be like, maybe I won't ever have a thing, maybe that's my thing, is not having a thing in a sense.
Yeah, you are the thing, right? It's all of you, and I think at least for me, giving myself the permission to do that has been really liberating, especially being an online coach for the past over decade. I've seen different seasons of the online space, and earlier on it was kind of the Wild West, and people were just being vulnerable, and that was really drawing and attractive, and that still is today to some extent. But I think what's more magnetizing in 2025 is the person who's multiple things. They show a little bit more of their life instead of the one thing that they do for business, for example. While there's good virality to just constantly focus on one thing, I'm talking trust, not just engagement on social media. It's better for the engagement to do one thing, but it's better for trust and loyalty and people like it. I don't know, at least for me, what I've noticed, the more that I show more of myself, it lowers my likes and my shares and all the things, but the comments and the DMs and people in real life connecting, saying how much they loved it is so much more. But when I'm just focused on art and sharing my words and the poetry that I write, it goes viral and it casts a wide net. And so I've found this dance of kind of being able to do both. And but I did lock myself in just showing my art for a little season, and I felt constricted. I felt like not really fully myself. It wasn't until recently where I've like let go of relationship coaching, and I'm in this messy middle trying to figure out what the next thing is, where I'm like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. But I'm in doing that, I'm also just able to be myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so it's a
Yeah.
really cool experiment just to be myself and then see what's kicking, see what brings me life, see what the algorithm likes, what the people like. And that's kind of like morphing into the next thing. And I think it just takes a lot of like, I talk about this in my book. So I wrote a book called Perspective, which we're going to talk about it. But the first chapter is about who am I? Not me as Kevin, but like existentially, who are we? Who are you? And if you identify as your thoughts, then your thoughts control you. If you identify as you are a body, then your feelings will control you. If your emotions, your mood controls you. But if you're your soul, your identity stays constant because your soul is constant. Your spirit is constant, right? And so it's identifying as that thing, not your circumstances, not any of the labels. I mean, even a lot of the way that I answered the question in the beginning, right? Like that can change. And I think if you arrive to the fact that I'm everything and nothing at the same time, I mean, I have freedom to be whatever I want to be. But the second that I say I'm something, I lock myself into that reality, for better or worse.
Yeah, because it's like once you have that identity as like a gamer, for example, and like I know I've dealt with this at various points in my life. It's like where I haven't played video games for a while, and there's like, oh, there's this identity of a gamer, and so now I feel bad that I haven't like
Yeah.
played games or whatever it is, right? And we can turn everything into this form of attachment that we're like causing pain and suffering with because we've like decided to identify with it so much or attach to it so much.
Yeah. The strongest force in our psychology is to be in alignment with an integrity to who we say we are.
Hmm.
And so any shift in real life change beyond just, I don't know, minimal changes, the biggest way to change your life is to change your perspective of yourself, which is your identity. If you want to change your life, you change who you believe that you are and your associations to yourself. And I think it's tough because that's fabricated. I think if you dove into any like of the healing work, a lot of betrayal wounds or abandonment wounds and stuff as from childhood. It's like I'm not enough. I need to be funnier or achieve more to get attention or whatever. So we fabricate that identity. Oh, I'm now an achiever, or I'm now a comedian, or now I'm a now this, like subconsciously as an infant. And so we fabricate that reality, and then we grow up. And this is what I'm noticing: we grow up 20s and 30s, and we say that ain't working either. And so then we join into the spiritual community or the personal development scene and work on ourselves and fabricate a different one of what we think should be. And we're playing this game still running from the authentic version of ourselves. You know what I mean? And so, or we have an idea of what authentic version of ourselves is versus absolutely letting go and just letting it pour out of our being and out of our soul. It doesn't make sense, and it's beyond comprehension. And that's just scary to the ego.
Yeah, something that came up to me as you spoke about that too is I noticed like because I can struggle with this idea of like authenticity and it's a big value for me personally. And what I noticed for myself is like often like I think when we say authentic, what we end up meaning underneath the surface is like our ideal self, like the version of ourselves
Ooh, yeah.
we wish we were being. And then it's like, well, I'm not being authentic, and so we're like crying and then upset when like actually that crying like
That,
bitchy part of you actually is authentic, right?
yeah.
Like that's what actually authentic is, and like I had to learn that very differently because I'd be like, well, my authentic self is like charismatic and doing all these things. And I was like, my coach was like, well, but you wanted in that moment to just like chill. Like, what if you just allowed yourself to like chill because that's what you actually want? And I did that. And like it led to, because it was a dating coach at the time, led to me actually meeting my girlfriend because I like
Wow.
went into this scene and like was just like, I just want to like, I don't really want to talk to anybody. I just want to sit here and play my video games while like other people are, it was a shibari scene, so people are like tying each other up and stuff
Oh, yeah.
and just like allowing myself to just like chill for a little. And people want to come talk to me, they can, but like I don't really feel like extending energy. And then that led to this relationship because I was tuned in with that like that frequency, if you will.
Wow. Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. It's being real. I think the same thing can happen when we think about trust.
Hmm.
When we're like, yeah, I'm trusting. Most people, when they say that, it's like, I'm trusting that it's going to work out how I want it to work out.
Mm. Yeah.
Not, I'm trusting that it's going to work out how it's supposed to.
Yeah. Or trusting myself to handle it however it's going to be. Like that was what somebody said to me
Yeah.
recently, right? The other one with that one that has resonated with a lot when I went to, you and I were talking offline, I went to like 54 concerts in a year, and I'd always associated with self-trust with taking the leap, but started to learn to understand self-trust as like when to not to. Like when to say
Yeah.
no, when to be okay with like that this isn't for me, right?
Mhm.
And like be okay with that, and like trust that part of myself as well, not just the part that's exciting and taking the risk and doing these other components.
Right. That's very true. Knowing when to move, when not to move. It's not all about taking the leap and massive action. It's
Mhm.
sometimes about sitting still.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's just a discernment of seasons because we have this ideal of getting to the next level and level, like, progress and all this stuff. And it's like, even if you're in a waiting season, that's still progress.
Yeah. Sometimes like the biggest growth we can have, right, is that we like don't need to find growth. Like it's just being okay with where we
Yeah, definitely. I've experienced that for sure. I've had seasons. I mean, man, I'm so impatient sometimes where I just want to like push forward with everything all the time. And it took me a long time to learn to just be and not fight for progress, but actually just to be myself. And then ironically, progress just started happening. And like as an entrepreneur, I started seeing my business as a garden and not a rocket ship.
Can you say
Like
more about that?
yeah, like when I was focused on it before, it felt like I was trying to get to a destination and I was so destination focused and it was rushed and it was hurried and it was a deadline and it was life and death and it was intense versus this just needs my presence like a garden. If I try to rush garden production, you introduce chemicals and all this other stuff that the fruit doesn't have the same, nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to be present with, and I'll know what to do. And I think
Yeah.
that shift in my soul and my association and my perspective of business um, changed a lot for me. And every
Yeah.
time I find myself slipping into hurry or rushed or scarcity or whatever, it's because I'm back on that old like rocket ship thing, trying to get to a certain point or whatever. And I'm just like, I just get to trust and just be present. That's all that it is. I'm just be present with it. Inevitably, it's going to grow. You know,
Yeah. Was there a moment for you where that shift really took place where you were just like, I'm kind of done rocket shipping and like really had this like shift to gardening?
Yeah, it was. I really had the grip on the analogy earlier this year because it was like rocket ship for so long, like, but I was getting frustrated because I was in a waiting season and I was trying to jumpstart my creativity again. And I was used to $250,000 and all this stuff. And all of a sudden it's like, I was just barely making it. And I'm like, I, I I felt into my soul and just the timeline of things, and I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be hidden right now. Like God's working on me. There's stuff that I get to work out right now that's really important for what's next. And so, I would kind of be all in or be all out, and be all in and be all out with work. Like basically lock in and crash out, back and forth, right? And I knew I needed to like work in a sustainable way because I never really knew how to. I was downing caffeine and nicotine and all this stuff just to like plow through, and then I would burn out, and then I'd burn out for a few days and get up and do it again. And that was like how I worked. It was not sustainable and it was very unhealthy. And so I think earlier this year I just hit a point where I was like, what if I just what if I didn't conquer the world in a day? What if I could just be present with for 4 hours? And so that it wasn't really a moment, but it was a decision to say, I'm not going to work more than 4 hours a day, which as a recovering workaholic was very tough for many reasons. Who am I when I'm not working? Right. Back to the identity piece. That was really what was under the surface. It was
Yeah.
rocking me. I was like, what do I do? Who am I? What should I do?
You're a terrible, lazy person, is what you are when you're not
That's the first thought that I had. Exactly.
working. Yeah.
But it forced me to get creative and to get to delegate and to get resourceful and also to make the most of my time, and that season was really supportive in that. But that's where I started to see, okay, garden, I'm just gonna show up in the garden for 4 hours. That's all it needs. Like, and I think also that analogy helped me too to see, like, I'm not the one that makes the results happen. God is. I show up and take the actions, and I could take the exact same actions and get different results. Like, the results are up to God, not me. And I think really relinquishing that was such a load of pressure off of me.
Yeah, I would love to dive into that more. Obviously, the word God could be a very loaded word for a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. When you say God in this particular instance, what do you mean by God? What's your perspective on God?
Yeah. So personally, I believe in Jesus as my Lord and Savior, traditional Christianity. Um, and I used to believe in God as a universe, God as oneness, unconditional love, which is still also partially true. In my book, I talk about different perspectives of God, and there that multiple things can be true at the same time. And so maybe whatever you think about when I said Christianity probably fully isn't the accurate version of what I believe truly,
Mhm.
because I don't believe most of what the church thinks, although I do. It's this symbiotic, it's this weird thing. So it's hard to pinpoint and nail down, but I do believe in a singular God, and I do believe that God is in us at the same time, and I do believe God is around us at the same time, and I do believe God is separate than us at the same time.
Mhm.
And just holding dynamic truths at the same time, I've found peace in that versus trying to lock into one. It's this or it's that, and um, ultimately, God is wonder and awe. God is also perfect love, and we can't ever comprehend or fathom God. So when I say God, I think more than anything, what I want people to really grasp and realize is it's my relationship with a higher power. It's my relationship to whoever God is. I have a relationship with God, and I have come to know who God actually is because I started praying, because I started saying, I need, this was 2 years ago. I hit the end of myself. Like, I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, 10 years of personal development, plant medicine, all this shit working on myself. And I was just got a massive breakup, upside down financially. My stomach was like a wreck from a near death experience I had. And I was just broken on every level. And I was like, this is it. I worked so hard on myself, and this is where I'm at in life. Something ain't adding up. And I was like, oh, I've been doing this my way. What's my relationship like to God? Like, I wasn't in relation to him. I didn't have God as an authority in my life. I was the authority in my life. And this is where it got me. So logically, I was just like, I need to surrender to God's will for my life. What does God have for me? Not what do I want for me? And I kind of was also just in a rational way was like, God probably knows what I need more than I do. If I'm being honest, I got what I wanted, and look at where I'm at. I don't feel this is where I should be in life. And so humbling myself to understanding God's will for my life is actually where I deepened in my relationship with God, even though I had questions about who God was. But the deeper that I prayed, the more I developed a personal relationship with God, not an idea of God. And that relationship is what I mean when I'm talking about God.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to, I don't believe it's my job to tell people what to believe.
Mhm.
That But I will say, developing a relationship with God is the best thing that happened in my life.
Mhm.
So I always want to encourage everybody, what's your relationship, not your belief? I
Yeah.
think the relationship matters more.
When you say have a relationship with God, I mean, that was something
Mhm.
I was certainly raised with, and I have my own understanding of what that means in my own self. And but I'm curious from your perspective, like, what does that mean to have a relationship with God?
Well, how do you have a relationship with another human? You do things with them and you talk with them. You share experiences. Maybe you have inside jokes. You share
Hmm.
desires. You share your secrets. The same is true with God. And I just think most people that I have seen love to talk about God and talk about who is God, but it's like, what's your association to that God, right? So when I was doing relationship coaching before, I was really helping a lot of people heal anxious attachment styles. And if you know anything about anxious attachment styles, it's your subconscious and your nervous system's association to intimacy and having a partner. And in the same way, it's like, what's your nervous system's association to God as an authority, as a father, as a lover, because he's all of it. And kind of doing the work around that. You know, in the book, I also talk about a lot of people, when they look at their life being broken, they look at themselves and think they must be the one that's wrong when they don't. But usually they question them. We question ourselves. There's something wrong with me because my life is like this. But what we don't stop and think is maybe our theology is what's broken, and our relationship with God, and where's God in the equation of your life. And I've just found more peace and fulfillment, man, honestly. Um, Developing that relationship and taking the focus off of empowering myself, and taking that same energy and focusing it on trusting God and loving God and getting to know God intimately through my own conversations with him, you know?
Yeah, no, I think that's beautiful. I think it's funny because I think about myself and my own journey, and like I said before, like I grew up very conservative Christian, and I always had a strong relationship with God. And there was a period of my life where I didn't identify as a Christian because I felt like people who identified as Christian so much were people that I didn't want to be associated with.
Yeah, totally understand that.
I didn't want
Uh-huh.
that brand, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And but like to me, it was like I have was told people before. It was like it was me choosing to follow the what I believed was God, and like following like the example that Jesus led that led me out of church, and
Mm.
not like to it. Like I felt like people be like, I don't know how you ever walked away and know these things. I was like, I never said I did. Like you said I did, because to you it might look like that, but like I think Jesus, when the example that he often gives is like he was the one who had made friends with the least of these, the people that like other people didn't want. It's
Yeah.
about like living in the world and not of it, and like building those bridges that are harder to penetrate that other people aren't willing to go into. And for me, it's like, I think I've had so many times in my life where I've been like at my wits' end, feeling like, oh God, what if I'm just like, what if I've manipulated myself? I'm just terrified of all this stuff. And then in that moment, just have this deep prayer of like, God, if I'm like going the wrong direction, like take me out of it, or like give me a sign. And it's like every single time, I specifically remember I was like at a music festival, and I was like spiraling and having this kind of like paranoia come up for me on MDMA. And I just like prayed. I was like, if I'm in the right place, like send me a sign. And that moment, my friend Bird comes over and just grabs my hand, like in
Mm.
that instance, right, where it's just like, okay, like I'm on the right, like whatever you want from me. Like I don't understand this, right, but like I'm gonna keep trusting because I feel like I'm on the right path. And every time that I've gotten to that point of doubt and fear and anxiety and prayed, or asked for a sign or whatever it is, you've given it to me, and continuing to like trust and follow that.
Hmm. Right. And that's the synchronicities and when God talked back,
Hmm.
right? And people hear about like, well, I'm praying, but it seems one-sided. I'm like, well, listen deeper because the music's happening all around us. You got to attune to hear it.
Yeah, when I think too, similar to how a lot of people can talk about with like manifesting a lot, where it's like a lot of times it's like we ask for something and then don't even realize that we've had it or have it in our pocket, right?
Right.
Yeah, like I did this whole manifesting about this apartment when I first moved to Seattle, and it was like it took me like 6 months to realize, oh wait, I got everything I actually asked for. It didn't look like the image in my head that I
Mm.
had. But literally, like I was like, I want my backyard to be a park, and I want my this thing and be by water, and I'm like, oh wait, I literally have all those things, right? And it happened in that same synchronistic way in all those components. But yeah,
Wow. That's amazing. That's a blessing.
yeah, it is. There's I think there's a lot of gifts that we get to have. Um, I'm curious, obviously you're known as the heart guy, and you've been through quite a journey from wherever you were born to now. If you were going to give us kind of the highlight reel of that journey to becoming the heart guy, to becoming the version of yourself now, like what does that look like?
Well, the heart guy, the name it really comes from my heartbeat saved my life when my mom was pregnant with me. They didn't hear a heartbeat, and they were going to clean my mom out the next day, and they scheduled an appointment, and they checked before they like cleaned her out and heard my heartbeat again, and they were like, "Oh, whoa, your son's alive still." So that's really where the name comes from. But I was a very tender, loving child growing up, just a sweet soul, really. And then I had experienced a lot of bullying and a lot of stuff in school that really just flipped a switch. I had a lot of anger issues because of that. And something just flipped in me and I became really hard as a human, um,
How old were you?
towards towards myself and others. That was around high school.
Mm.
Yeah, where I really started like, okay, I'm done with this. I'm done just sitting back. And I shut down my artistic side. I shut down my tenderness and my love and affection. And I just built up walls and um, beat myself up. I carried a lot of shame and a lot of anger. And I pushed people away. And so my own journey with that was, my first 3 relationships ended because they cheated on me. And so that was another thing where I was like, what is going on? Like, like, that's not a normal experience. And so that pain drove me to understanding love and relationships. And um, then I became really good at supporting others in it. And people always knew around me that I was reading those books, even though I was in the fitness industry. And so that slowly started my coaching business, where one thing led to another, and people were like having their marriages saved, and things were shifting, and they were letting go of exes that was, they were having a hard time actually letting go of just from talking with me. And so I'm like, okay, I guess this is a thing now. So I shifted into relationship coaching and really scaled that and took off and had a lot of success with it. Also had a lot of fun with it because I love talking about love, right? And that's when I launched the brand as the Heart Guy, and it just kind of worked, right? Because I was also in fitness still at the time, and so I was very passionate and fiery and alive, had a lot of energy. Was also drinking a lot of caffeine. um, and so it's like, I was leading with my heart on my sleeve. I was very vulnerable online. I kind of embodied it in a lot of ways. And I think God was just kind of like, all right, you want to be the heart guy? Let's do it. And just continued to hand me a lot of lessons to humble me and to open up my tender side again. And I think that's where I'm at now, where I'm continuing to deepen and understand more of what that means. Um, but you know, that name came to me at a party. Somebody mentioned it, and I was like, "Yeah, that works." And then I took it on, not really knowing. I think the weight of what that means to live with that much integrity, or to a brand. You know what I mean? And it's been a gift. I'll say that. But it's gotten me to the point net today where, a few months ago, I decided to let go of relationship coaching, and I'm in the middle of trying to figure out the next thing.
Mm.
And um, it seems to be more of supporting people with their relationship with God and also the energetics of business. So think business coaching, but not strategy. So not funnels and sales and like that stuff matters, but your own conviction with your message, your own conviction to how you're showing up online, the clarity in which you're conveying everything. So the energetics behind that, and that happens through your relationship with God and yourself and a few other things. So that's kind of where it's going, and it's still. So even a client of mine messaged the other day. She's like, you're still relationship coaching. So you're talking about your relationship with God, and she's like, you're still like the heart guy because you're getting to the heart of things, and it's not just the surface level. Let's make more money. It's let's have more fulfillment, and I don't want your business to own you. A man is measured not by what he has, but what has him.
Mm.
What has you, right? What can you not let go of? And I think that's it. It's like I want people to experience peace, and yeah, the abundance will follow and the impact will follow, but it won't make you, right? Like if you're trying to get impact, like I did in the past, to validate yourself from some shame you have,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna have some impact, and you'll need more, and you'll need more, and it'll mean more and more and more, and so it's doing the work to say, you know what, the impact doesn't matter. And ironically, that's when the most impact happens because God's going to bless you because it's not, you're not going to be ruined. It's not going to ruin your soul.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and long and short of it, that's kind of, I hope I kind of went around about to where we are today, but that's talking about the question of the heart guy.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I have a number of follow-up questions, and I think I just want to start with sharing with that. A lot of the reason I was, I think, initially drawn for you is like I've always been like obsessed with the heart, particular since about like 2015. Like, are you familiar with heart math at all?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love them.
So like, yeah, so I'm a big like heart math fan and like all the science behind the heart and how the heart literally has its own brain that communicates to you with like a deeper sense of information, right? And like for me, I've centered a lot of my life around following my heart, right? And like
Mm,
learning to listen to it. Like all of the songs tell us to do, but we, kind of not don't pay attention to it. But there's great science behind it. And I think to your point, I think you are still following that like essence and that energy through what you do and how you do it and how you're communicating it. So just really grateful for you and your journey and how vulnerable you are on it.
thank you.
Um, yeah. I think to kind of drill into one of the points, one of the comments I've heard you talk about in a couple other podcasts is this idea of like idolization. Like you
Yeah.
mentioned, like having turned like relationships into an idol for yourself, and I think even impact into an idol for yourself. And I would love for you to just expand on what you mean by that, because I'll be transparent. When I first heard that language, I was very triggered by that. I was like, what in
Mm,
the world does that mean? Or like, this is this old idea of Christianity stuff. And I was very turned off by the idea. And after particularly sitting with your book, honestly, I think I had a lot of really profound revelations on it, but I would
mm.
love for you to kind of dig into what you mean by that.
Yeah. What's the number one thing in your life? What do
Mm,
you focus on more than anything? That's your idol. I mean, that is an old school Christianity word, but that's what's the aim? What's the pinnacle? What's the number one in your life? Right. And for me, for the longest time, it was relationship. I loved relationship. I was a relationship coach. Right. And so my sense of safety and my identity was tied to relationship, whether it was going well or it wasn't. Some people, it's money and their bank account. Does your safe, how safe do you feel based on where your bank account's at? Does that control your emotions? Right? Or does it rock your identity at all? So that's another thing. And I think that's part of why idols are so bad. Anything other than God and your relationship with God, because God is constant.
mm,
So if your idol is God, it's constant. But if it's any circumstantial thing in the world, it rocks you because it ain't going to be great forever. Right? Like life has its ups and downs. And so my idol was relationship for the longest time, meaning, again, like if the relationship was going great, I was feeling great. If it wasn't, I was a mess. I couldn't focus on anything else. I was distraught. It was just, it took me out until it was fine again, or they were fine again. Right. And the classic like codependent behavior, but that's honestly what it was. And I'm a freaking coach and I was coaching people on this stuff and I was doing all the nervous system healings and all the things. And it wasn't until I actually like rearranged in a value structure somatically and a felt sense experience of repentance and going, oh my God, relationship matters more to me than my relationship with God. And I was like, oh, I'm switching that up. I remember the day and the moment that happened. I fell down to the floor. I was like, what am I? Whoa, that's why I've had all these like codependent behaviors. And then in an instant, I was able to like show up different in my relationship. I was able to speak up for things that I used to keep my, mouth shut about because it didn't rock me because I didn't get my sense of worth from her anymore. Right. And then the same would happen with money where, you can have no money and still have money control you,
mm-hmm,
and it's like I've had a lot of money and blown it. I've had no money and I've been homeless before. Right. And it wasn't until very recently where I was able to say, you know what, I don't like the money in my bank does not define my state, like how I show up in life. And it did for the longest time. I got my sense of safety from it because I've had a lot of trauma with money. And so the idol of money means I'm not thinking about how to make more money all the time or how much money I have in the bank all the time. My focus is not money. So that's what I mean when I say idol is really focus. What's the primary focus and aim of the majority of your day? And more so from a place of consciousness, not necessarily literal focus.
yeah, I really love that, and it resonated with a lot with me. Where I started to sit with it with was this identity aspect of like, because for me, I would say like relationship has been a big one too, where like
Mhm.
I would have a story around like, well, I didn't have this relationship or I don't have a relationship and that's why I'm a failure or that's why I'm whatever. And realizing for me how much my identity, like how much my ego, how much my like my sense of self-worth is wrapped up in whether or not I have a relationship or how that relationship is going, or money or these other aspects of my life as well, I'm sure. But like the relationship one was such a way that I had defined my own value,
Yeah.
right? And like I think that that was the thing where I started to realize, like, oh, that would be, even if we're working from an Eastern perspective, I would say like that's attachment or whatever. It's like that idea of like idolization that I've decided that this thing is what determines how valuable I am versus like to your point, like surrendering to the awe and wonder of the world or whether that's God or like following this deeper path and
Mhm.
trusting that you are so much more than that. Right. And like, I think there's such an importance. And I had a similar experience where when I kind of had that mental and emotional shift, I did that last night and had the kind of this morning where I was just sitting there going like, oh, I feel like free from the need of it, right? From the need
Mhm.
of to have calm and peace that like whether or not I have this, it's going to like define me or not.
Right, right. It's again, it doesn't have anything to do with your identity.
Mm.
The second that it has something to do with your identity, we create enmeshments and attachments, and that's where it just gets a little dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you lock yourself into that reality and you start playing that game. And if we get talk religion for a second, I mean that's what Jesus was talking about when he was referring to law. He wasn't saying right and wrong. He was really talking about a state of consciousness. And that's why he was like, I came to abolish to fulfill, not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it and usher in a new law,
Mm.
a new consciousness. It's not literal the law.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part of why I love scripture so much, because you can see it from so many different perspectives and angles.
Yeah.
But we can go into that in a different conversation. But
Yeah.
yeah, man, it really boils down to identity a lot of
Mm.
times.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, kind of circling back to that opening question I had with like the who are you? You mentioned like several different aspects of identity. You might have said like it's easier to kind of just figure out who I am not.
Hmm.
With some of these other pieces, like you mentioned, like being a gamer or being a coach or being a lover, like what do these things mean to you? And what do you do to make sure that none of those things like become that idol, but can still be part of who you are?
Mm. I identify as a soul first, which can't be defined.
Mm,
And I think if I can hold that mystery
mm,
and let it be a mystery, then I'm able to free myself to be whatever I am in the moment. Right. And I don't get this perfect. Like even recently, like I've identified as a high achiever for a really long time. That's great. And it's also not when you want to chill out. You know what I mean? And so, um, sometimes I recognize I'm operating in that old identity and I'm like, wait a second. Okay. I can crank in that gear. I can shift there, but I don't need to live there. So let me shift gears. Right. It's just freeing to be able to be authentic with what's in the moment, and what you really need in the moment. And so that's what I really mean. But yeah, to check and make sure that those things don't become an idol. It's part of my identifiers as a human on earth. But again, internally, I'm like, I'm a soul. I'm all of it.
yeah.
I'm not just that one thing. And even with stuff like astrology or human design, I'm like, cool, okay, maybe. I'm all of it, but yeah, sure.
Hmm.
And I think holding that for me, I'm like, I don't need to let anything define me other than God. And
Hmm.
that's why I talk so much about your relationship with God.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, I want to pivot into your book, which
Yeah.
is called Perspective or Perspectives.
Perspectives.
Perspective is perfect. And like I had the pleasure of reading like your opening chapter, and I thought it was just wonderful. Like I
Thank
really,
you.
really did. Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, it was such a refreshing read, and the kind of stuff that I really love, which is it's like the way I think you've explained it, and definitely I experienced it was like this, sort of a book of contemplative wisdom, right?
Yeah.
It's like it reminds me of almost like a book of Zen koans to a degree, right? Where you're given these questions or these statements that sit in paradox that you have to sit and mull over. You're not there to just read through the book and finish it and get some insight and go take some massive action. It's there to really sit and wrestle with. And I found myself wanting to go to back and back to it and to sit with it
Mm.
and to take a walk and sit and chew on it as you describe. Um, I'm curious, like what led to this book coming to fruition at this point in your life?
Man, I had an idea to write a book for 8 years, and I didn't know if it was going to be like a book on how to have a healthy relationship or like a book of my life. But I just was like, I know I'm going to be an author one day. But I didn't know what the book was going to be about. And eventually I was just about 2 years ago, I sat down for the first time and was like, I'm going to write a book. And so instead of getting up to go to the gym in the morning, I went up to a coffee shop, and I still have that note on a Google Doc, and I started typing out, um, just brain dumping. I was like, all right, this feels good. I'm at a coffee shop. That's like literally what I typed out, you know, and I'm going to work on my book, and I'm excited. And then I didn't touch it for a year until about this time last year. And it took the book, all in all, it took me about 8 months to write, which is pretty quick, I think, for a book. But I was just like, man, why do I keep putting this off? I was like, well, I think it's going to be this big, giant, daunting process. And I was like, wait a second. Like, what if it could be fun? That part. And then that's what kind of domino affected the whole thing. So I was like, oh, it could be fun. And I know how to be disciplined. So let me set aside time every morning, non-negotiable. I created a whole accountability group with a bunch of friends of mine, and we all held each other accountable to doing something every day. My thing was writing for an hour and first thing in the morning. And so the first week was pretty grueling. I'm not going to lie. I was like, what is this book? What am I going to talk about? But I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Artist's Way book and like morning pages, but just brain dumping on the page. And that's kind of what it was. And then about a week in, I was like, wait a second. I've been writing my book. And I looked at Instagram and all my captions. And at the time, a lot of my quotes and like short poetry wisdom bits were going viral on my stuff. So I was like, I've been writing this stuff. So let me scrape the most viral stuff. And I scraped it all the best captions over the past 2 years. And I put that in a Google Doc. I organized it, and I was like, well, there are my chapters. These are the themes and the kind of the stuff that I'm talking about. And then I'm like, well, what else would I want to say about all this? What else do I want to talk about in these topics? And so that's how the book grew shape. From all of that, I very quickly, it grew the skeleton of the book, which is there's 3 sections, one about self, one about love, and one about God. And then the chapters are within that. And then I think a week later, I was reading over all the little parable, like short poetry bits. And that's what I had collected, right, from all of my stuff before. And I say a lot without saying much. And that just became my writing style. And I was like, well, ooh, that'd be cool if I had like a collection of these. And everybody, I ran it by a few friends, and like, I'd buy that. Like, heck yeah, like that, make that happen. So I'm like, okay. And then very vividly, that the intro, the first chapter that you read, came through in one sitting. Just like, and I was like, oh, okay. And so that actually was the first chapter completed, was the intro. And then I was like, that makes sense. Now I know the intention. Now I know all of the stuff. And then I just kept writing every day or reorganizing, or I'd spend an hour with it every morning before I did anything else. Looked at my phone, nothing. And 8 months later, I looked up and I was like, this is done. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Like, so, because I'm working through my book, I have like 300,000 words written. I've kind of hit that point where I've taken a break from it for like 3 or 4 months now because I'm just like overwhelmed by like, I have way too many words. I've got to like sit back and like edit it. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with all this. So for you, for your writing process, it sounds like you showed up and were just like, as long as I'm working on the book, whatever that looks like, that counts as like your writing hour. Like that was like,
Yeah, because some days I was just literally reorganizing things. Like, I want that one to talk about this before I talk about this.
Right.
Because it's not like even the editing process. I didn't get an editor because intentionally I'm not, there's not capitalization where there should be, or there's not punctuation where there should be, because it's poetry. So for emphasis on stuff, it's not grammatically correct. And it's also like, yeah, just to get a traditional editor would have been a nightmare. because they wouldn't know the style. So I had to edit it,
Hmm.
and I had to fine tune it and read through it so many times. But yeah, the process was more about like, does it flow, number one, or is it too jarring to jump from this one to this topic, to this topic, to this topic, right? Does it flow? And I was thinking about that. And I was also thinking about the reader's questions. So what questions might they have about this? And then I'm almost predicting their answer and then predicting the next question they'd have with the next bit. So, it was thoughtfully put together for that reason, where I'm almost guiding people through a thought process to grow in your sense of self-awareness and to really start to see new perspectives of life, because that's the whole premise of the book. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And you're also in a different location physically when you see a different perspective on something. And that happens spiritually too. When you see a different perspective, you are at a different place spiritually. So if you want actual change, it only happens through spiritual perspective shifts. And that happens, and I talk about it in the book, we can only change our life, but we can't spiritually evolve our life. It's not an act of willpower. And so that's at least a truth that I put out there, and I say, hey, test it, contemplate it. Like, I don't know, maybe. That's just what I've seen true. And that's the cool part about the book, is I'm not like, this is the thing. It's like, well, if you believe that, then you're going to feel this.
Yeah. Yeah, that was something I really appreciated so much about your book. Because like again, kind of almost my initial resistance when I like started getting into some of the stuff, a lot of the Christianity stuff is just like I got my own bag of like religious trauma around stuff, and like I was like, oh no, okay, is this going to be like that? And then as like once I opened up your book, it was like I felt like I understood your perspective on Christianity so much more, and like your own essence under like that is deeper. And I'm almost curious about this from your perspective about like,
Yeah.
you talk about like we're in the world, and then we're within the country, we're within the state, within the city, within the whatever. And I'm curious, like, do you feel like Christianity for you is closer to the home that you're in or closer to the world that you're in?
It's the world. And I say that because of the broad word of Christianity
Hmm.
and then people's understanding of what that is. But I call myself a Christian. And then some of my close friends that we see the exact same perspectives don't call themselves Christian because they don't want the association with what it means.
Hmm.
They say they're a follower of Jesus, right? So I don't care. I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't care what people think about me. But I do believe in Jesus. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good question.
Thanks. That's what I'm here for. I actually took down, if you're cool with this, I took down a couple of like my favorite quotes from the opening chapter, and I would love to just read them back to you, and then you give me whatever you think. And if you want to throw something back at me, I'm open for that as well. But I'll just start with the first one. So this one that I have is: reality can shape you, or you can shape reality. Only one is freeing, yet both are empowering.
I love that because that was the one that I knew would twist people's brains. Like, how are they both empowering to be shaped by reality? And the more empowering thought you would think is that I shape my reality.
Mm-hmm.
But to be shaped by reality, how could that be empowering? And I talk about this later in the book about specifically God isn't something that we shape. It's something that shapes us. And when we encounter God, it demands that we change to receive unconditional love. And because there's stuff in us that resists it. And so that's what I mean is it's one of the most empowering things that I've ever felt is to be shaped by God, more so than trying to shape my reality. And that's what I mean by that quote.
Beautiful. The next one is: while reading, be sure to avoid right and wrong thinking. It's not right or wrong, it's just different. Yet, What's right for one person may be wrong for another. And at the same time, we all need the same things. Judgment is the enemy of self awareness.
The enemy, quote unquote, to this whole game that I bring people through in the book of consciousness is judgment. Seeing something as right and wrong, that consciousness is what gets to go. What play a game, drop it all idea of what you think is right, and just have the courage to see in a new perspective. Mm-hmm.
I think for a lot of people, like right and wrong can be a very challenging thing to deal with or let go of in either sense.
Totally.
I'm curious, like from your perspective, somebody might be like, oh, well, if I give up right or wrong, what if I start doing these bad or harmful things, or these other people start doing these things where I allow these things to happen to me because I don't see it from that consciousness anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is your wisdom, your advice, your thought, or question for those people?
You can still have morals, right? The consciousness of judgment is really what I'm talking about. And you can still get wrong of the consciousness of judgment and say no to things,
Hmm.
right? Like it doesn't make you spineless and just accepting of everything. That's not what I'm talking about. Um, but that consciousness grips because it lives it lives tiptoeing on reality. If I do this, then I'm good.
Hmm.
And that's a condition,
Yeah.
right? And so judgment creates this hierarchical ladder we have to climb to be enough.
Hmm.
And I talk about worthiness in the book. Like that's such an irrelevant conversation. You're worthy because you're worthy. Stop trying to think that you're worthy or feel worthy or achieve to be worthy or prove that you're worthy. Just stop focusing on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden you become the most worthy person because you're humble. Right. And so that's really what I mean. But yeah, like more self-awareness is going to be supportive, and also more awareness of your perspectives is going to be supportive. The judgment of it, though, just like I was talking about before, it locks you in your life. So if you love your life, stay where you're at. But what we're combating here is your own self-righteousness, or you have to put down the need to be right.
Right.
Right. And the healthiest way to hold your truth, which is another thing I talk about in the book, is your truth. The healthiest way to hold it is by saying, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Like that's the healthiest way to hold a stance on something. Because otherwise you're on attack or you're on defense constantly in your life.
Yeah.
I don't want to live like that.
Yeah, and it's like to your point, like around idols earlier, it's almost like you turn whatever your own internalized sense of morality is into like that pedestal, that idol, right? That, or the sense of being
Yep.
good. Like I'm a good person, and because I do these things, and if I let go of this, well, then I risk like not being that. But if I'm so attached
Right.
to this identity or how people perceive me in this viewpoint or in this particular culture or whatever, then it does keep us frozen or trapped.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Next one is strong is the mind that can see multiple perspectives. Stronger is the mind that can see them all and know they are true simultaneously. Real strength is in discernment of the truth without distorting it with your preferences.
Again, your preferences, your need to be right, the right and wrong thinking. Don't distort. Can you see it neutrally? And that's kind of a ladder. Like the step number one is seeing different angles,
Mm-hmm.
not just seeing what you see. Step two is fully seeing the come from on all angles. And I learned this in relationship coaching, right? Like if you have to honor and respect the other person's perspective or awareness or their come from, if you can't see that, you're not going to be able to love them deeply because you only see your perspective. So you're going to try to get them to conform, or you're going to butt heads, Or you can say, oh, they're just different, and that's okay, right? And when it comes to spiritual navigation of your life, discernment is really important. Of just because and I talk about this later in the book, just because something's true doesn't mean it's the truth.
Hmm.
There's layers to truth. And so in navigating a lot of life, just because it's appealing and it seems true is great, but it may not be the truth. And there can be a lot of distortion, right? It could be a half truth. It could provide some liberation or some freedom, some support, some benefit, but then down the road, you're enslaved to it. Think about any addiction, right? You take the substance the first time and you feel great, and then you keep needing it and needing it and needing it and needing it. Well, then that isn't the truth, obviously, because look at where you're at. It was true that it supported you with whatever the heck was going on when you first took it. Like pain pills, anything, right? So layers to it. It's just really, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, one of the things that I loved in that particular one was the statement around preferences. Like, have you read The Surrender Experiment by
Oh, yeah.
Nelson? Yeah, because I just read it recently, and so I was really blown away. For context for the audience, like Michael Singer basically goes on this experiment where he basically surrenders anytime it's something that conflicts purely with his preferences for how he wants things to be, and he goes on this very real, powerful, full journey through that. And I was reading this, and that just stuck out to me recently too, because I've been thinking a lot about like, where am I clinging to preferences versus like clinging to truth, if you will, right? Where am I on how I want things to be or how I wish things were? A lot of times, I mean, for my own self-worth stuff, I've often wished that I was different, right? Like I wish that like who I was, I wish I could be XYZ thing or not have XYZ thing or whatever it might be, versus like learning to surrender to, how God made me. If that's the lens we want to take on it. And so I think that's been a very, very valuable piece to have. So I wanted to say thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's another great book, Surrender Experiment. That'll change your life for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And then the last one I have here is: your insecurities will bind you to the truth. Your opinions will numb you from experiencing freedom. And your beliefs create the chains of your reality.
Locks you into that reality, right? So what you believe to be true, you will subconsciously prove yourself right. And that's scientific. Your reticular activating system in your brain will look for evidence to prove yourself right, to get a dopamine hit. And then you become a slave to that belief, even if it's not what you want, and even if it's not even true. We're wired to prove ourselves right. And I think overcoming that is how you change your life, because you change the perspectives and associations with things.
Yeah. What does one do to unshackle themselves from said beliefs? I mean, there's so many people who talk about, mindset work or journaling or this thing or that thing, prayer, meditation. There's a million ways that people kind of talk about doing this, but like, I know maybe it's more for you personally. What have you found has been like the most powerful in actually being able to unshackle those beliefs and then maybe not find new ones to just cling to? And
that happens too. Yeah. A few things. That's a really great question. Number one, maybe. The word maybe. Sprinkle it all over your life. If you want to change your life, maybe this is helpful for me. Maybe this is what I still think. Maybe. Let go of the definites. And the nervous system that's dysregulated is going to reach for certainty, even in stuff that's not true. If somebody says something with certainty, and it makes sense in the moment, you're going to believe it. Cool. Oh, that must be true, because you're dysregulated and you're looking for safety. But instead of grasping for certainty, grasp for trust. And that's why I talk about God so much, because you can only trust to the level that you know you're loved. You can't trust something that you know doesn't love you. And the more you trust someone is because you know they love you that much, like a lot. So it's like, you know what? I actually do trust your opinion or whatever it is. And so the opposite of uncertainty and dysregulation is not certainty. That's a truth, not the truth. In my own lived experience, it's trust. And not necessarily just trusting in myself and trusting in the universe, even though I've done those things, trusting in God, that there is an orchestrator to it all, and he has my best interest. And building in that relationship, then I knew that I was more loved. I specifically, Kevin, was more loved, and I could actually lean back and start trusting. And that then gave me the ability to be in the messy middle with my beliefs and let go of something without clinging on to the next thing or clinging on to the opposite of what I used to think, because that's not freedom either. Right? But to go, I don't know, and to sit in that quote unquote uncomfort. If you've relied on your beliefs and your identity for so long, it's extremely uncomfortable for the ego to not rest on what it used to rest on, and to not get solidity and a false sense of comfort with some false pseudo truth that was fabricating your reality. It's a deconstruction of your reality to see differently, and ultimately to play a different game. There's a line in the book that's like, if you want to play a different game, you change your truth. If you want to, I'm butchering it in my own quote. Go figure. I haven't get to read this book again. Dang, what was this? It's like, if you want to play a different game or live a different reality, you change your beliefs. But if you want to change the game altogether, you unplug from the matrix. Right? So there can be change within your reality. You can change one belief and you can have a different value, and you can go to the gym and you can start eating better and you can see some change. I'm talking about unplugging from the matrix, which is not leaning on those things to create an identity at all. And it's just hard for the ego to grasp that I'm everything and nothing at the exact same time, and I can be whatever I want to be. But that's the most empowering place to start from.
Well, it's the most adaptable and flexible for reality. And like,
yeah.
I talk about this a lot. I mean, have you ever read Wisdom of Insecurity by Alan Watts?
No, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just does a fantastic job with, like, it was my first kind of opening to just the nature of reality being fundamentally uncertain, right? And like, I think it's like, to your point, like I'm a big believer in philosophy for that same reason, where I think if you start to ask questions and you realize that fundamentally all things are uncertain, and like certainty is an illusion, right? Like the only thing that really is certain is uncertainty. And there's deeper levels of that where you can become attached to uncertainty in other ways and stuff like that, right? There's always kind of these other layers and pieces that we can get to. But I'm a firm believer that like the closer aligned we are to capital T truth, the sort of like unknowable truth beyond my understanding individually, the closer I am into alignment, the more in harmony I am with God, the universe, the other people involved here, because I'm living in alignment. But the biggest trap can be, even for, I know some of us who have done a lot of this work, can be just like thinking that we have it figured out, that we have the answer, that we have that certainty, that peace. And it's like the clinging to the certainty or the way that it is what ends up pulling us out of it. I mean, even monks who reach enlightenment, there's this thing often referred to as like the enlightenment trap, where like they experience this enlightenment and then they become attached to that, like an attachment, right? And then constantly seeking to find that thing again, versus learning how to,
right?
Yeah, versus like learning how to actually be here, like where you are in the attachments. They even talk about it with some people. It's like learning to be okay with attachments. That attachments like are part of being human, right? It's part of it, like being able to go through the heartbreak and the suffering and the pieces, rather than trying to always be above it or separate from it.
Yeah, that's another thing too. When I was relationship coaching, so many people were trying to just like get rid of attachments, and I'm like, you're trying to unhuman yourself. Like, you're a human. That's beautiful. You love somebody, you got attached to them. That's what happens. That's how we're evolutionarily wired. So it's like, yeah, it's so important to navigate and not over spiritualize it all. Like, you have attachments. You're human. You have an identity, no matter how much you try to not. And
Hmm.
that's why I think it's just important of where we place that identity.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I'm curious for within like your own journey, like are there any places right now for you personally where you are weary of where you're placing your identity currently?
Weary of, as in like I'm trying to shift out of.
Yeah, or just like you're noticing some patterns or skeptical or noticing where maybe a current identity that you have that maybe was serving you up to a point currently like is no longer serving you.
Yeah, I'm in a really big shift. Uh, it looks like the solopreneur thing.
Hmm.
I got it syndrome. I think a lot of men can relate to this, where I get to delegate and I get to like let go of things, and a team can handle this, and I get to trust others with the baby of my business, and you know what I'm in the book and all these other things, where I don't have to do it all, and I used to get off on being able to do it all,
Mhm.
uh, and that was a crown that I wore. Look at me, I did everything, and I'm over it. But it does creep in every once. It does creep in every once in a while where I just default and start doing, and I'm like, oh wait, I can delegate this thing. Um, but yeah, that's one currently where I believe that I'm out of it, but old habits die hard type thing, where I just slip in default sometimes to my old way. But it's on its way out for sure.
Yeah, cool. Cool. Yeah, I resonate with that one with like just the identity of like being an entrepreneur in general, and then like realizing that you can work for some great companies that allow you to basically be an entrepreneur, to be a leader, to like take it on as if it's your own, right? If you're, but like a lot of us can be sometimes attached to like, oh, it has to be like my business versus like, why can't you like build with these people who already have all these other things kind of laid out for you? You don't have to reinvent the entire wheel.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah. Um, Let's see, I've asked you a ton of questions that I already had written out. There's
Awesome.
something else to go with you. Um, One of the things I've heard you talked about often in your journey was I think you talk about it as like having this like deliverance experience, particularly with demons. Can you
Yeah.
share about that? Like what actually happened? What did you experience? What is or is not a demon? Like what does it mean to have deliverance in that moment? What happened for you?
Yeah, I think I love talking about this. It's a very important topic, and I also don't want to make the demonic a shiny object either. So I'm going to go into this conversation saying that this is important, and it's a part of my work, and the bigger part of my work is God's love for you. So, like focusing on your relationship with God, and that these things can kind of just fall off.
Hmm.
And it's biblical. Jesus cast out demons. That didn't just stop happening. And demons aren't always the things that are crawling on the wall like the Grudge or whatever from scary movies. There's levels to how demonic influence can affect humans. Now I didn't have an opinion on this at all a year and a half ago. I was just I, I don't know, didn't know much about it. Went through another breakup, and I was like, all right, God, everything relationship with God, and that these things can kind of just fall off.
Hmm.
And it's biblical. Jesus cast out demons. That didn't just stop happening. And demons aren't always the things that are crawling on the wall like the Grudge or whatever from Singing My Life Is Yours, like actually hit that point. And I was fasting and kind of just distraught. And a friend had deliverance and was raving about it and all this stuff. And I was like, cool, I'll book one. Like, let's see. But I was
When you say let's book one, like, what do you mean by that?
a deliverance session with a deliverance minister to cast out demons.
Okay, and just so for my context for the audience, so can you just like debrief like what is a deliverance session? Like what does that look like to
It's a
hire?
prayer, quite
Okay,
literally. It's a prayer where somebody's praying over you, praying in like blessings to you, and also talking to spirits and casting them away
Hmm.
in the name of Jesus.
Got it.
Um, so that's logistically what it looks like.
Yeah.
But and I had no idea, and my friend had freedom from it, and she was raving about it, and so I was in heartbroken, and then I'm like, you know what? Let me try this.
Hmm.
If I have demons, great, they're gonna be gone. If not, cool. That was a great experience. Um, I had never sweat that much in my entire life, even in a sauna.
Hmm.
My whole body was sweating. I was burping for like 2 hours straight during this prayer, and stuff was coming out of my mouth like that I couldn't see. Literally felt like things were leaving my body. And I had stomach pain for 4 years following a near-death experience. I had neck pain, hip pain, and I had tried so many healers, doctors, energy workers, diets, so much stuff, biohacking. Um, Nothing really moved the needle. After that deliverance, and I'm a year and a half out from it now, absolutely zero pain.
Like immediately, like next
I mean,
day kind of thing?
yep. Yeah. All the pain in my stomach was gone. All the pain in my back was gone. You just left me. And I actually experienced peace in my mind for the first time.
Wow.
It's like you don't know that you have low grade anxiety until the anxiety's gone, you know? And I was like, what the just happened? Like, and somebody saw me the next day. So I was out of the coffee shop getting some work done, and they were like, you're different.
Hmm.
And I was like, I have no words still. And I actually experienced what it was like to be born again, I feel, in a lot of ways. Because then after that, I started desiring different things. I didn't literally, like, even sexually and relationally, my attraction to women changed. My type changed with
Hmm.
no willpower of my own.
How so? Like what changed for you?
Literally, like, I would find certain women attractive, but especially like overly showing their bodies that was a turnoff to me now.
Hmm.
Before, that was really sexy to me.
Hmm.
Like, I'm like, what? That's weird.
Hmm.
I desire different now, different behavior. I'm seeing like in their soul and in their spirit, right? Differently. So, and there we can go deep down the rabbit hole on this because demonic influence can also you create desires for you. I don't mention demons in the book, but I do talk about energetic parasites, which are essentially the same thing. You can have a parasite in your being, and just like a physical parasite produces a sugar craving, for example, you think you have a sugar craving and a sugar problem. It's the parasite that actually is craving the sugar, giving you a need, right? But if the parasite stays hidden, the battle is you versus you. So the problem never really goes away. And in the same way with demonic stuff, it's if my own willpower can't overcome it, if there's torment, that's the definition of torment, there's demonic influence. And if demons aren't a real thing to you, the narrative is I just need to lock in. I just need more willpower. I need to get it together. I need more healing on this one little wound thing. And so then it stays hidden, and you're going to keep cycling over and over and over and over again and battling with this thing. It creates its own needs and desires to stay alive. So, that's the biggest thing is like you have to recognize that not everything that you want or crave is your own. And if you don't know what being clean feels like, you don't know what being dirty feels like. So
Hmm.
after experiencing peace and sustained for months, years now almost, I know what it's like when I have an urge to do something that's not my urge, or I think something in my own voice in my head that's not actually me. The battle's not just you versus you, right? And so I think that is really important, but that's deliverance. My life completely changed from that. And again, it's not everything's a demon.
Hmm.
And people that get into deliverance ministry start thinking that, and that's a whole nother thing. It's not all spiritual warfare, but there are things that happen where, yeah, there can be legal rights for demons to torment a human, and that can look like addiction, that can look like um, uncontrollable greed or lust or whatever it is. And again, you have these uncontrollable things that happen in your life. It could look like darker things like always having sexual dreams or not being able to sleep properly at night. Some people actually feeling a presence around them. Those things are real.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm curious about from your perspective, because I think one of the, and you kind of touched on it with like people saying like everything is a demon, is like one of the things that people can do, and I actually really like this word more and more, is that we can demonize things, right? We can
Yeah.
start to demonize that thing. We can turn it into a demon. And I think like, from my perspective at least, like whether it's a literal entity or whether it is a one that we are constructing of our own like mind, essentially, like the torment is still sort of real either way, right? We start to create that nocebo effect or that placebo effect where we're causing damage to ourselves because of this thing. And without that awareness, like of what that is or where it's going on or where this thing comes from, a lot of times it does just kind of like eat at us. I
Yeah.
think, I was talking with a friend where we were kind of talking about this idea a couple years ago, and she was talking about how when she was in like high school and she was in her youth group and like some prophet person came to like their church and was like what he ended up doing was he told each of the kids like the sort of demonic energy they're going to be wrestling with their whole life, right? And so of course that
What
creates
the
like
heck?
yeah, exactly. Well, that's what her parents said. Her parents got super pissed off at the church and like all these other things, but
Yeah.
like it's like it creates this sort of self-perpetuating thing. So I'm curious from your perspective, like how do you identify whether this is something that you're like creating of your own by like kind of trying to be aware of these things versus like navigating this something to actually like expel or actually deal with in that way.
hmm Again, if can my own willpower overcome it?
Hmm.
If then that's me. Can it not? And it feels uncontrollable, and it's almost like something took over me. It could be overeating, binge eating. It could be like lusting after women, and I'm like, okay, was that really? I just need to like not stare, right, or not like have a wandering eye, or is it just impulsive, controllable all the time, more, 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 more? Okay, well, this might be something else. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. And you, I don't know. I actually, I do deliverance prayer now. I don't know until I start praying and I see what happens in their body.
Hmm.
I'll go, cool, we'll see. Sometimes it's their flesh and sometimes they just need to like lock in a little bit and have a little bit more willpower,
Yeah.
and sometimes it is some other thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I yeah.
It makes me think a lot about too. I don't know if you've looked into much of the research around like past life experiences and stuff, but like
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
one of the things that they found with that is that like whether or not past lives actually exist or not, it's like treating the experiences as if it did provides healing and transformation like for that person. Like when you're actually
Mm,
treating it as if it was a real thing that happened and like that person is as and it is true, regardless of to your point whether it is true or not, that person gets better, which is like the most important part of it,
mm.
which I think is really
Wow.
fascinating.
That is fascinating. Wow. And it make a lot of sense. The power
Yeah.
of belief.
Yeah. Very much so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Speaking of beliefs, and you've talked a lot about like beliefs that you've changed and the importance of not being shackled by them. What is something you believe now that you would have refused to believe 10 years ago?
Mm. My life isn't up to me. I used to believe that if it's meant to be, it's up to me and I'm going to make it happen. Uh, my life isn't up to me. I don't want it to be up to me. I want what God has. And I think, taking a surrender experiment lens, it's like, maybe I'll have those things. Maybe I'll like my desires will come true. Maybe it'll happen how I want it to happen. It'll probably happen a little different and I'll still get what I want energetically. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
may not look like what I think it's going to look like, but I'm going to trust in God. And that me 10 years ago was all about self-empowerment and I'm going to make it happen. And that led me 10 years, almost 9 years later, I guess, to that point in my life where I was just burnt out, lost. I was like, okay, there's more here.
What's what's like next for you in your life? You've gone through the relationship coaching, you have this big spiritual awakening, you've now written your book. I think it comes out in like a couple of weeks from this point out. Like so what's like next for you in your journey with God, with all of the stuff that you're building?
I'm still figuring it out. We'll see. I think the biggest thing is It's starting to shift more towards, my coaching at least is starting to shift more towards supporting people in their relationship with God and unraveling trauma around that to actually just build a relationship with God. And then stewarding your calling, which is showing up confidently online, showing up with clarity and conviction in your voice, showing up with a brand message, knowing your brand. And that's not just the colors and stuff, like the energetics behind the strategy of your business. And a lot of people focus on business and the strategy. That's the landing pages, that's the sales copy, that's the the setters, the closers, the layout of the business, the structure of the business, and all of that is important. I'm noticing that people are coming to me now that are resonating with me because of the shift in the relationship with God stuff, where they're like, oh, I want to do this God's way, not my way. And they also still want to leave a big impact in the world. And they don't want to do it how all the bro marketers are doing it, or like all the advice that's out there, and they want to do it differently, or they're trying to do it that way, and then they're feeling inauthentic, or there's some rub and they want to be themselves. And as that happens, the impact happens. And so that seems to be where it's taken shape. I still don't even have the full words for it, and this is literally like 3 days old, me sharing this with you. So, that's what I'm seeing. We'll see what happens. I'm going to be supporting those people that are coming to me for that. And it's going to take shape into what it takes shape into.
Yeah. What's like the most common business energetic that you're seeing people need or needing to make a shift in?
They're following what they think is going to work instead of leading with the conviction in their heart. So they're scripting their stuff on social for a hook, and then it leads into this, and it sounds great, and it might create some results, but I want the like, what the fuck do you gotta say energy, right? And that is what's going to be magnetic beyond AI, beyond any algorithm change, is that energy. So if I can get somebody to embodying that energy and that level of conviction where they know themselves, they know God that through relationship, and they know their assignment, their calling, their mission, their purpose, they know what it is they're here to leave an impact and do. And we can convey that in a way where the right people see it and go, I need that. I want that. I like you. That energy is really what I'm supporting people with. The logistics and the strategy and all that stuff is just icing on the cake. It's going to like scale it. Right. Because people sometimes scale it, but then the business has them and they're locked in, and they're still working a 9 to 5, even as an entrepreneur. Right. Or what have you. So, that seems to be what it's becoming, and I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, what I hear in that almost is like, it's almost like that feminine polarity of business to a degree, right? Where it's like the masculine polarity is like all this structure, all this, here's how you do it, here's what you do the thing. But like without that, like, it's like a cup that's empty, right? You have a cup without any wine in it. It's like, well, the wine's really important. Like you got to have the structure too, but you got to have that. Otherwise you have nothing to actually sell, even if you're great at selling.
Yeah, that's true. And that's the juice for the structure, right? So yeah, totally. And it makes sense given that I was a relationship coach for 8 years. That I was supporting people with that because I'm deep in the energetics and the trauma and all that stuff. So I'm taking a lot of that same knowledge and just applying it to business.
Beautiful. Well, Kevin, this has been just an absolutely fantastic conversation to have, and it's been such a blessing to have you on here. One question that I ask all of my guests at the end of the episode is just, what's one question you would have for the audience that would have them think about something from a different perspective or consider something in a different way?
Can you learn to love somebody else's perspective? And in order to love it, you have to try to see their perspective. Where's that person coming from that you don't agree with? And can you just inquire for a little bit? You don't have to take on their beliefs, and you don't have to see their perspective as true, but could you try to at least have compassion and see what they see and why they might see that? Put aside your own stuff. That will change your life and your relationships.
Beautiful. Kevin, again, this has been such a blast. Where can people find you, follow you? Where do you want to send people to?
Yeah, go to Instagram, search for The Heart Guy, and you'll find me. And then you go to heartguy.com/book, and you can get my book.
Yep. And that book is called Perspectives. It's awesome. So please check it out. Thanks again,
Appreciate
Kevin.
you.
Yeah, have a great rest of your day. Ciao. Awesome. That was a blast.
Yeah, that was great.